Hello, and welcome to today's NorCal Business Aviation Association webinar. My name is Phil Derner, your producer for today's event.
So on the note about record maintenance records and flight records in general, our next guest is Mark Leeper, the President and CEO of Aviation Logbooks. I'm going to let Mark talk a little bit more, or Mark will talk during his presentation about Aviation Logbooks and what they do. I think, Mark, when we were talking, this has been about you're 5 years into this, obviously a long career in aviation and working with aviation organizations and FBOs, but interested to find out not only what your perspective is on the aircraft, on the record digitization process and kind of what that means, but it'll be great for you to touch a little bit just on how Aviation Logbooks goes about it. I know we talked a little bit about the secured managed aircraft record technology, the SMART program, and things like that. So with that, over to Mark Leeper and Aviation Logbooks and aircraft digital record keeping. Mark, it's all yours. Oh, I apologize, just about forgot before we did. We're going to launch the third and last poll during this segment anyway, talking about flight department transitioning to digital records. So please take a look at that. Give us your feedback on that. And with that, Mark Leeper, it's all yours.
Thank you, Craig. Really appreciate this opportunity to discuss a real important issue. You had asked me, we had discussed my background, and I won't go into real depth, but I think it definitely works into the presentation and the situation in aviation today. But I grew up in and around aircraft and aviation. David was talking about the fact that he'd been in the maintenance world since he was 8 years old. My father was a lieutenant colonel, retired Air Guard fighter pilot in Fresno, so I grew up on the guard base. The old days, we used to spend the night on alert out there. I got to fly the 102 simulator when I was 10 years old and got to crash it, so all the bells and whistles went off. But so I've been in and around airplanes all my life from the pilot standpoint. Went to college to study business, and ended up my junior year robbing my college fund and going out to the local airport and getting my private pilot's license. And so on and on. I married Carolyn. On our first date, I discovered that my future father-in-law was going to be, or is a World War II ace in P-51s and Spitfires. And so anyway, we're an aviation family. And so I've spent all these years around airplanes. After school, after I finished college, I went into business development, and I've been the founder and owner of Seabright Company for 20 plus years. And so we've been involved in aviation and the medical industry for it seems like forever now. All aspects of aviation, we've had customers. In 2016, I had the privilege of being introduced to Larry Heimbach. Like Dave Colbert, many years in the maintenance arena. Larry literally wrote the book on logbook management. And I was approached to help them get a product to market, which was digital logbooks. Chris Reisinger and Michael Jackson, two brilliant IT software people, had built a program. And so I was introduced to the state of affairs of maintenance record keeping, and I couldn't believe it. How can this be that something in our industry that is so technically advanced could be still based in paper? I had been in the medical arena when it was converting from medical charts to that, but that's 30 plus years ago. This picture here is sitting in a 650 ER Gulfstream in Houston a couple years ago at NCBAA, and you're just looking at the technology that has advanced our whole industry so very far. It's just amazing how far and how fast we've grown in an industry, and then we go to record keeping, and so in essence, we're really still based on a Wright brothers era way of keeping track of our records. We've got 25,000 business aviation aircraft flying today. The majority are still recording their logbooks in paper. It's about time that we take the technology and some adjustments that the FAA has made in terms of their requirements for record keeping and apply it to our state of affairs today. We've got to continue to progress along with the other side of technology. So, everybody that's on this today has taken time out of their valuable day. We're extremely busy, so I'd like to just say that the information that I'm going to try to get to you today is information that you can take immediately and make a difference in your flight department, whether it's small, whether it's big. The information that we're going to talk about will help both small and big flight departments, huge management companies, et cetera. We've got about $500 million worth of logbook valued customers in our portfolio. There's this information, and I like what David Keyes said about David Colbert said about learning the language, or maybe it is Keyes, I'm sorry, the language of accountants. This information transcends the maintenance department. It affects every aspect of aviation, from sales and acquisitions to business. Every avenue of aviation is affected by the record keeping, and so this is something that's there's benefits that can come from everything. We help companies minimize uninsured risk. Our product expedites aircraft transactions, liquidity resales, secures collateral, reduces maintenance costs, and increases safety. And those are all things that can be done fairly quickly in your flight department if you put things to work. So let's go back to why do we keep a logbook? Okay, and now we keep a logbook because the FAA says that we have to keep a logbook. Reading there, operator is responsible to record and manage airframe, engine, and avionics installation, inspection, etc. So since we have to keep a logbook, why do we keep it in paper? I mean, if you think of other industries, from medical, business, education, all throughout the world, other industries are fully transitioned or transitioning to a digital data environment. And you talk about getting the accountant's attention. We've done extensive research and collected data on the cost of paper, and you can see that number. 175 million plus of expense estimated for the cost of keeping our industry in paper. And I'm talking about business aviation. And that $7,030 per aircraft, that's an average. What really happens is that some experience a very minimal cost and others experience a huge cost to their aircraft. And a lot like Farmers Insurance, we've pretty much seen it all. We've been out working with Part 91, 135, 145 companies for many years now, asking about their needs, about their problems that they have with their record keeping. And so we've run into amazing situations, amazing things that take place. Here for instance, is a 727 that we're associated with that did a run up outside and rammed the hangar, and the fire suppression system drowned all the records. All of the logbooks were laid out in the hangar, and they were drowned, and the airplane was completely scrapped. So we bumped into statistics, for instance, on average of 5 aircraft per year at roughly $1 million devaluation per incident for those type of situations. Missing information from logbooks critical to aircraft value and airworthiness. Again, we have people come to us and say, we can't find our records. We will go on site and find missing records, but many times they're not findable. They're completely lost. Like Dave Colbert was talking about, your maintenance tracking system is a line item tool, and you can't reproduce critical information from that. So we see all types of situations where missing documents are causing expense to aircraft owners, and let's talk about where that expense typically lands, because a lot of the owners or back-end managers, the accountants, the trust companies, etc., they never see or understand typically where these costs are what causes these costs. They just write the checks. We see all the time people will say, okay, well, we've got to replace this component. The component's not actually bad. The documentation for the component has been lost. And so your only option there in the maintenance world is to replace the components. And this goes on all the time. So again, the accountants end up paying for these problems, and nobody really understands why. So I think it's about time that the whole industry and the business aviation industry stands up and takes personal interest and becomes accountable for a situation that is causing all of us grief in the aviation industry, the business aviation industry, and we all get on a path to correct this. So the critical information we talk about, David had mentioned gun safes, etc. Yeah, that's one of the better places to keep your information if it's not digitally duplicated. But this information that's out there, logbook information, is sequestered. It's insulated from pre-buy inspections. Our pre-buy inspections that we are involved in, we have companies that are going to have to fly their director of maintenance across the world, literally, to a city, put them up in a hotel, pay all of their per diem for a week or weeks to leaf through logbooks. Crazy. It's like if you have all of your cash in that gun safe and you can't access it from anywhere except going back to where its source is and opening the filing cabinet, the gun safe, all these things. You can't access that. And so pre-buy inspections are affected with this. It's insulated. Conformity audits, etc. Many of our major companies that we work with, Part 135, have learned that if you can put this information into a digital format and lock it into an accessible system, it's much quicker to do conformities and audits, ramp checks, etc. We had a Gulfstream 550 a couple of years ago, tagged in Hawaii. The FAA wanted to see some things about the airplane on a ramp check. The airplane was there to stay until that ramp check was completed. It was actually based out of Hong Kong. The records were in Florida, and everybody was in a pickle. So what are the options there? Well, the options were to fly those records over to Hawaii. Well, what took place from there was that we actually digitally transferred those records into the system, the digital system, the electronic record keeping system. Within 48 hours, the FAA was able to log in with a username and password and do the research that they needed, and that airplane was freed up to come home. So maintenance, of course, research time, etc. We'll go through that more at another time. Legal events, God forbid if we have accidents, and after listening to David Keyes, the information that we're talking about here, this electronic record keeping system can come into play and give great benefits to any type of legal research that is done that you might need. So estimate 30 to 50% of your aircraft value is based in its records. We talk about a cost of industry from a research time. Approximately $50 million a year is spent researching records in our industry. It's very likely that when I walk into a new flight department and talk with the director of maintenance or the director of aviation and ask them to calculate the amount of time that they spend balancing records, shuffling paper between maintenance tracking system, between their MRO, between their paper logbook, around a circle, they spend 50% of their time is a number that comes up on average. Electronic record keeping can reduce that by 90%. So there's just huge benefits for, again, small and large flight departments to transition to a digital environment. So here's our gun safe with our logbooks locked in it. So let's talk about some of the things, maybe some reasons that continue to keep us in a paper environment when we have the technology and we have the okay from a legal standpoint, FAA standpoint, to make that transition. So what keeps us in that paper environment? Well, one of the things that we've discovered is that there's a lot of people that are involved in the maintenance area of aviation that have either no hair or a lot of gray hair like mine, and people have a real tough time letting go of the past. And so we run into all the time that people are pretty closed-minded about wanting to transition. This is their fiefdom, and they want to keep that information locked down. And we're talking about attitudes right now. Is that, and David Keyes was talking about it, we need to turn around and look at ourselves as professionals. And professionals are involved in this obviously full-time, and they're constantly adapting and they're constantly looking at better ways to do things. And so we've got to open our minds up to making this transition. I was involved considerably in medical clinics back in the late 80s in their transition from paper to digital, and it was amazing to see that transition unfold. The doctor's office initially just rejected the chance to go digital, and then they went. It goes through a series of stages in transitioning from paper. The doctor would take notes on a piece of paper on his knee pad, and then hand it to his staff, a nurse, clerical person, to enter that data into the computer. And so that's where it would start. And then, but typically the staff would have to chase the doctor down to try to find that information. This went on for roughly 10 years, and it's still not completed. So again, change is difficult for all of us, but this is change that we need to have in process right now, full speed ahead, is to convert to this digital environment. One of the other reasons that has been a barrier to transitioning is people's impression that loss of a paper logbook is information is insured. It's not. And like David Colbert said, you lose a logbook and the insurance company is going to buy you the binder. So it's a misnomer that there's any insurance involved in helping you recoup the loss of lost records. The next thing, maintenance tracking system is a backup. It's not. It's a tool. It's a line item, much like a line item is on anything else, but it is not the logbook. FAA's gone on record stating that maintenance tracking data does not verify airworthiness of an airplane. And the airworthiness information that is in the logbook, why aren't we today able to, as a pilot, have that information transferred right to our iPad, right to our flight planning? Typically, I would go out and pre-flight an airplane. Almost never would I ever wonder about the logbook information. It was always a conversation across the hangar to the person responsible for keeping that airplane airworthy. hey, it's good to go, isn't it? It's good to go. Why isn't all of this information visible and accessible to the pilots to immediately determine airworthiness? You talk about a safety issue. How easy would this be to have this digital information transfer the status of airworthiness? Wouldn't you like to know, wouldn't a green button on your flight planning mode means airworthiness? Wouldn't a yellow button on that flight planning device tell you, okay, there's something to review here? Maybe you've had problems with a certain component on an airplane over a period of time. Maybe an AP unit's been replaced, or you've had a series of problems with one component. And as a pilot, you want to know what's going on with that airplane. Maybe they've completely replaced that component. Why can't you punch a button on an iPad or another device or an FMS on the airplane and find out the status of that maintenance? And it's a lack of communication, and it's a lack of emphasis in our industry to make these things happen. So this is current state of affairs with the maintenance system in the business aviation. You notice up here, paper logbook system. You know, we find them in filing cabinets, you know, bins. The bin to the left was a aircraft that came in from Europe. It had been in a hangar. It had been cannibalized parts-wise. All types of components have been swapped out. No 8130s at all. Back in Florida, everybody's jumping up and down because there's no 8130s. We can't get the airplane conformed. It won't go into Part 135. And they were wasting tens of thousands of dollars a day because of the fact that this was in paper. So here's our paper logbook system. It's completely insulated from everybody that needs to know the information. Nobody on the left can get to it. Aircraft brokers can't. Banks can't. They can't confirm collateral or secure collateral. Nobody can see this information. The maintenance tracking system companies can't get to it. And there's a real issue there. There's no true blockchain of information between maintenance tracking, MROs, and the poor flight department manager. And you can see with all these things up in the air, everything is insulated. This is our information flow currently. This is where we can be today. Digital record keeping, the technology, the systems are all in place now to facilitate this change to this type of record management environment. The difference here, in the center is your logbook. It's your electronic record keeping system logbook. It is the one true source of information for your maintenance records on an airplane. Exactly like an accounting system, you can't have 2 and 3 different accounting systems. An accounting system is, again, the one true source. Other sources of information that flow into it, maintenance tracking system, information from MROs, et cetera, is supportive line item data. Like your accounting system, your checking account ledger cannot replace your accounting system. Your Visa statement for business credit card transactions are not the accounting system. With the electronic record keeping system as the hub, it opens the door to blockchain this information with all of the parties that need to be on the same page. Starting with our maintenance tracking system companies, we've seen several incidences where maintenance tracking was ahead of or behind the curve with the actual status that's secured in the logbook. We had a major company of ours with 5-6 birds that they discovered through doing an audit with our electronic record keeping system were on the verge of overflying major maintenance events. And it was because the maintenance tracking system company just was out of the loop. And so with an information flow that is locked down in a blockchain format, information can come out of MROs. The managing person of the logbook can verify that information. It's deposited in the one true source of information. It can be interrogated automatically by the maintenance tracking system. They can log that information into their data, and they can send a verification back to that electronic logbook. That's all. That technology is available right now to make it happen. So once that data is locked into our ERC system, it can be given to anybody that needs that data. In the future, we envision that data to come right from the aircraft to be we can provide the whole logbook to the cockpit, right to the FMS system, or other means. It can be downloaded to a PC or laptop for storage on site. The banks can have access to logins and usernames to secure collateral. I can't tell you the grief that we've had customers go through with paper logbooks being held hostage when an airplane is left. We've all heard those stories. And so we have the technology today to let all of the critical logbook information communicate with the sources that need it. So it sounds like a great idea, but what we all have to do is take action to push this forward if we really want to change our industry for the better. And proactiveness is always a better way to change things than doing things out of looking in the rearview mirror at a disaster. So a recipe for making this change for your flight department would be A, get your records scanned. It's inexpensive comparatively. We have processes in place to make sure that it adheres to FAR 4312. So you can't take records down to Kinko's and throw them in the door and go pick them up. This has to be done under the supervision of aviation professionals. So these records are scanned. They're scanned and uploaded to an AC compliant 127 alpha approved system. That locks it in a secure data environment, and then it becomes an accessible records. And there's ways to scan on site that we can help people do. There's companies that will come on site and scan your records, but big or small, get your airplane scanned, uploaded, and secured in a AC 127 alpha environment. This is a customer that we just did a job for in the Southwest. Like we were mentioning, these two boxes in front of us are roughly 40% the value of a $35 million airplane. Interesting story. This airplane was purchased overseas. They flew somebody over to do the pre-buy inspection. They went through all of these records. The DOM that did the inspections flew back home. The airplane went through the final transactions. Money was wired overseas. Everything was done. The deal closes. Airplane flies across the ocean to the East Coast, all the way to the Southwest. They open the door and these boxes are not on the airplane. Okay, money's exchanged hands. Airplane's supposed to go into Part 135, income producing aircraft, and it sits on the runway for 6 months as they try to find these records and figure this out. So finally, the records are found. They get to where they need to be, and we're in scan-in. How hard would it have been to have these records scanned, locked into a 127 alpha system? Now you have a complete digital logbook and security. The owner of the airplane would have the username, password, and control the digital version of that. They would have avoided literally hundreds of thousands of dollars of expense if they would have just done that first. So again, scan your records first. If it's going into maintenance, have the maintenance company scan them. If it's going into a sales and acquisition situation, have the record scanned first. If it's going to go into conformity, audits, etc., get those records scanned and get them buttoned up. If you're changing management companies, so these are events that people have to find and research records. At that point, get them scanned and get them locked into a compliant system. Everybody knows how to get to the ACs. Please stick your nose in there and go through AC 12078 Alpha, and it will explain what the FAA remastered in 2016. I think it's June of 22, to give direction about what is required for electronic record keeping systems. Basically, their language is in the first part of I think 31 on that is that everything about the security, the operation has to exceed what you have in paper. So it's good reading to understand exactly how that system works.
And Mark, just to mention for the audience, we have posted a link to that advisory circular in the chat tab, so it's right there for them if they want to reference it.
Oh, thank you, Craig. So that's it, Craig. You know, that's everything in a nutshell. Questions that anybody has?
Yeah, so we'll open this back up as we bring the panelists back on. We actually do have several questions, and Mark, while Dave and Dave are joining back on, I'll actually throw the first one your way, which is let's see here for Mark. If the technology is available and the FAA regs, although not, I guess, necessarily technically a reg, but certainly guidance, right, in an AC 12078 Alpha, if those, what, in your opinion, is keeping, in fact, as we look at the polls, it's about a 2-to-1 ratio of people that have either transitioned or considering it to those that aren't. What do you think it is that's keeping some flight departments from moving in that direction? I think it's awareness. There's a load to it. It could be a budget item. What are you finding when you engage with prospects about, you know, converting from paper to digital? What do you see are some of the biggest barriers for flight departments to make that decision and go forward with it?
Well, I think the biggest thing is attitude towards making the change, which is very normal. If we go back and, you know, I was talking to Larry Heinbaugh, who's my partner and the founder of this company, about our difficulty in getting people to change attitudes, and, you know, being right up front. It's primarily attitude. You know, you go back to the jet age when the Boeing 707 was first introduced. All the airlines told them no. Boeing, no, we don't. The passengers don't want that. There's no propellers out on the end of the wings. They want to see those things spinning around, right? They had to beat the drum for a long time before Pan Am finally came on board and says, "Hey, I think the world's ready for the jet age," you know. And that gave Pan Am a 20-year head start on everybody else in terms of profitability, et cetera. The inventor of the blended winglets 20 years ago, had a product that was proven to increase the efficiency of an airplane by 4%. And he was told no for 10 years until finally the BBJ, the Boeing Business Jets, added them. And then it became vogue, and now they all have it. And oh, by the way, those winglets, increase your efficiency by 4%. So a lot of it is attitude. The next thing is really has kept it from moving forward has been the scanning aspect. How do you get the legacy records? How do you get the airplane records in a position to scan them and get them uploaded into the system? So as technology has moved forward, we have got much better processes now to scan these records and immediately upload them into an AC 12070 Alpha compliant system. So that has been a real barrier. Cost doesn't really affect this. A couple $1,000s a year for an airplane. We've seen people throw out more caviar and champagne after they land than the cost of an electronic record keeping system. It's just not very much money at all to accomplish and achieve these benefits. So I think those are the two primary things. And you're right, Craig. The awareness aspect of it. It's not often that we go to an event, an NBAA event, that we don't come home with a great customer. People just don't know that. They don't know about the solution. And quite frankly, back to after I had spent 20 plus years in aviation, they don't understand the problem. The problem is pretty much insulated into the maintenance arena, where we just kept it bottled up for all these years. We've got it's people, it's key people in the industry that are going to push this forward. The influencers need to understand, and we all got to get on the same page.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And clearly, something that when everything's remote like this, and we're not having a base or those regional events where we tend to draw a lot of people in the industry, probably the challenge gets even more difficult, right? It's even a bigger barrier.